history of presidents and the wars and the conflicts that they were involved in, starting back from good old George Washington. And I think we all know which conflict George Washington was involved in, but I will go ahead and address it anyhow. So, back in the day, let's pull up this. Let's pull up 7 minutes on the clock for no reason at all, and let's go down the list. So, number 1, George Washington held office 1789 to 1797, Revolutionary War. That was his jam, right? So George Washington, Revolutionary War. John Adams, no war. Thomas Jefferson, 1801 to 1809, he was in office. The Tripolitan War and against Tripoli, which is now Libya. I don't know anything about that, to be totally honest. So if you know anything about that, feel free to drop in the comments. Anything you'd like me to know about it or address to the audience. James Madison, in office from 1809 to 1817, the War of 1812 and the Creek War. James Monroe, in office from 1817 to 1825, the Indian Wars of 1817, the First Seminole War, and the Monroe Doctrine in 1823. So that was, and he's only the 5th president. John Quincy Adams, the 6th president, no conflict. Andrew Jackson, Black Hawk War and the Second Seminole War. Then we have Martin Van Buren, William Henry Harrison, and John Tyler, who had no conflicts between 1837 to 1845. William Henry Harrison didn't really have a chance because he died like 29 days after being in office because of the flu, because he didn't want to wear a coat. So James Polk, 1845 to 1849, the Mexican War. Zachary Taylor, 1849 to 1850, no conflict. Millard Fillmore, 1850 to 1853, no conflict. Franklin Pierce, 1853 to 1857, the Third Seminole War. 1857 to 1861, James Buchanan, no conflict. Abraham Lincoln, 1861 to 1865, Civil War. Andrew Johnson, no conflict. Ulysses Grant, Battle of Little Bighorn. Rutherford Hayes, James Garfield, Chester Arthur, no conflict. Grover Cleveland, the Apache War against Geronimo. Benjamin Harrison, First Pan American Conference. Grover Cleveland, again, no conflict. He had a gap in office. William McKinley, Spanish American War. Theodore Roosevelt, Russo-Japanese War, while he was president. So that was while he was president, not while he was in service. William Howard Taft, no conflict. Woodrow Wilson, World War I, obviously. Warren Harding, no conflict. Calvin Coolidge, no conflict. Herbert Hoover, no conflict. That was post-World War I. And then FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, World War II. Harry S. Truman, into World War II. Then the Cold War, he's accredited as the Cold War beginning during that time, and the Korean War. So the Korean War was a major conflict. Dwight Eisenhower, Cold War continues. JFK, Bay of Pigs. Lyndon B. Johnson, Vietnam War. Richard Nixon, he's credited with the war on drugs here, although I probably wouldn't, necessarily put that into the same category because that is not a foreign military conflict. Gerald Ford, no conflict. James Carter, Jimmy Carter, the Camp David Accords, which probably would not classify as a war. Ronald Reagan, Grenada, Central America, Lebanon, Libya, Cold War ends. So a lot of skirmishes. George H.W. Bush, Gulf War I. Bill Clinton, the Persian Gulf War with Iraq, Serbia and Bosnia, Kosovo. If you guys remember all those videos on TV back in the 90s when Bill Clinton was president of us bombing Kosovo. That was crazy. And then George W., it actually says George W. Bush, Afghanistan and Iraq. And then Barack Obama, they're calling it the Pashtunistan Waziristan War, or the war across the Duran line, or basically all the conflicts that we had in Syria, Libya, Operation Inherent Resolve, which was our conflict in Iraq against ISIS, and a campaign of drone strikes all across the Middle East, Africa, Asia, against foreign fighters. So Interestingly, one thing left out from all of that was conflicts in Africa. So there have been, and there still are conflicts going on in Africa. So we kind of gloss over that quite often, as well as in the Pacific, conflicts in Africa and the Pacific that we kind of gloss over. I would just say there's always something going on in Africa that we are kind of ignoring. So it's probably worth mentioning that there's been war in Africa going on for decades.